everybody, Jason Burmis here for wearechange.org, and with less than 72 hours to go, the Bilderberg conference has been announced in location and attendee list. And some of those names on the list, I got to admit, are a bit of a surprise, while others are definitely not. I am joined by Tony Gosling, somebody who has been following this for many years now, somebody who actually was looking into this in the days of Jim Tucker. And we were lucky enough to talk to Tony a couple weeks ago about this upcoming conference with little to no knowledge about it. But now we know, beginning in Thursday in Switzerland, we will have Bilderberg 2019. So, Mr. Gosling, thank you for joining me. And I have to ask you, what are your first impressions of this list?
Well, I mean, I know, sorry to disappoint you, but the list to me is a kind of peripheral, really. I'm fascinated by whatever subjects it is that they're talking about. And also, I love to read between the lines when they write those subjects out. Obviously, the list is important. There'll be new faces and old faces on there, surprises. There's always a few surprises. But the thing that really jumps out to me about this is they're back in Switzerland again. Okay, so they're back in French Switzerland. This really is Bilderberg heartland. And, of course, it's Nazi heartland because much of the planning around during the Second World War and the money laundering that was going on right here. So you can just imagine, if you want, Alan Dulles and his chums sitting up on top of the Swiss Alps, rubbing their hands as more money is rolling in, and as the Second World War is raging around them. This part of the country, I mean, just looking at this area around, it's a sort of line of latitude around North Switzerland. We've had other conferences, Bilderberg conferences here, but that's not all that's there. I mean, you've got in Austria, one of the most recent ones in this zone in Tyrol, but you've got things like Hitler's Bormann's Eagle's Nest, Über Salzburg, and just near there you've got the place where the Nazi Party was formed in Munich.
And Tony, can I just stop you
nearby.
for 1 second there? You know, a lot of people don't understand what Eagle's Nest is. Why don't you tell people what that is?
Well, this is where we've seen most pictures of Hitler, where he's looking out over the mountains. That's where he used to go for his kind of rest and recuperation, and for chatting with the senior high command of the Nazi Party. And I mean, it was more to do with the party rather than the Wehrmacht and the really senior people in the army. But anyway, that whole area I think is a fascinating part of the world. You've got a place where Martin Bormann, his wife, lived very close by, which is near, just having a look at my map here, a place called Bolzano, which is not too far away. But that whole zone, I mean, of course, there's also something which I discovered only just a couple of weeks ago, was that Karl von Habsburg, he's the one who's recently come out saying that Brexit is like watching a reality TV show. He's, he was one of the people who started the Pan-European Union in 1923, which was the mission to unite Europe as one single state, that is the United States of Europe. That's a mission which is foundering at the moment, but it's causing enormous trouble and chaos in Europe and a lack of democracy as these technocrat prime ministers and technocrat chancellors are installed around Europe. That also started in Munich in 1923, not long after the formation of the Nazi Party. That's another thing, in this zone. Admittedly, that's a little distance away. It's the other side of Lake Constance. But there's just so much here. This is where the mission to get Martin Bormann out of Nazi Germany at the end of the war was conducted by the British Secret Services, really in order to get the guy who had the signatures to the bank accounts in Switzerland, which had so much of the money. So I think it's. I mean, I know the list is important, but I just think it's fascinating that they've actually come back here again.
And let me say something else.
We've had Switzerland before. We've had Austria and Switzerland in recent years, but this is. I shows to me. I mean, there was some speculation about it being Turkey and Canada and various things, and there was reasons for those speculations, but this is safe country for them. And it was great to see the I don't know if you follow the All Smoke and Mirrors blog, Manfred Petrisch's blog. He spent a lot of time in Switzerland, and he's now in Abkhazia over on the Black Sea, blogging about Bilderberg. He's one of the first people to do a really good article about this year's conference after having got the information which came out in one of the Swiss newspapers. But he calls this a home game. That's what he calls it. So he's got lots of supporters, mostly Swiss-German supporters, who will be going down there to make sure they get snaps of every single Bilderberger as they come out and try and get into this hotel, hiding themselves away, trying to make sure no one even notices them.
You know, and you just mentioned the vicinity of important things. One of the things that I saw that just kind of shocked me a little bit is its closeness in the general vicinity of CERN. And we know that CERN actually went to their first Bilderberg meeting in 2017 on the heels of them announcing that they would be building a much larger Large Hadron Collider to kind of take the place of this one that's, searching for the quote-unquote God particle, and tells us about the Higgs boson. And with all of, the quantum computing, the artificial intelligence, now the ethics of artificial intelligence on the agenda this year, with many of these new technological elites coming up. One of the names that caught my eye was a guy named Jared Cohen, who is a executive over at Jigsaw, aka Alphabet, and in 2014 he authored this book, The New Digital Age, with Eric Schmidt, who is now back on the list after a couple years of supposedly being absent. I guess that you're not reading too much into that list, but do you think that we can?
No, I do. I just thought I'd start by talking about a bit of the history. Mm-hmm. I mean, also near Zurich was the home of the Reinhard Gehlen, very important figure, who was a Nazi intelligence officer who was immediately brought in to work the day before the official surrender for NATO as part of Operation Sunrise. This is I just think it's interesting to try and take another look at the zone where they are, the werewolves, the Gladio werewolves, the fascist cells, which were started by the Nazis at the end of the war as stay-behind forces, and then incorporated into NATO in the 1980s and 90s, creating the strategy of tension, which has, I think, influenced so much this whole war on terror and the creation of ISIS that we've seen today, these kind of fake fascist cells pretending to be kind of Soviet units, pretending to be Muslim extremist units, and this manipulation of warfare using proxies. This was something also that was cooked up in Bern, at Her Majesty's Secret Service, the James Bond film filmed not far down the road near Lake Neuchâtel. So it's that kind of thing I think I like to look at as well. The Tower of Basel, very close by, which is where the central bankers of the world meet up once a month to decide our fate. This is just the central bankers deciding and regulating the global money system. Basel's literally a stone's throw from Lake Neuchâtel, which is the next lake down. So, that's one of the things I like to look at as to Switzerland is a safe territory for them, but I don't think it's going to be totally safe, what with Manfred and his little platoon of photographers who will be looking at them. But you're quite right to focus on absolutely bang up to date, the modern stuff, which is their obsession with controlling technology. You're absolutely right about that, Jason, and that's exactly what they do. They want to control the future. They believe the future is going to be able to be controlled by technology through AI. And it did make me laugh to see them talking about the thing that made me laugh the most about it was the weaponization of social media. Mm-hmm. This topic for conversation, they really are taking the mickey. They're having fun with us by putting this on there, because of course social media is something that they have largely developed. The Bilderbergs have financed Peter Thiel and people like this, and had at the Bilderberg conferences, through the years. This is a creature of theirs, and so although they're talking about the weaponization of social media, they own it and they control it pretty much.
Yeah, and when you talk about a guy like Thiel, this is the president's acting technology advisor, and obviously Kushner being on this list is making waves all around. But the return of Schmidt on the heels of him supposedly leaving Alphabet altogether, other than being a technological advisor, I think, at this point. Remember, he stepped down as the CEO of Alphabet back in 2017 when he thought he was going to be caught up in a Me Too scandal. Then he was on the board. Then he stepped down from that. And recently we've seen him in the media trying to placate to the people. It was okay. We were working on this Dragonfly internet browser that was censoring things with China. Don't worry about it. It's actually a good thing. China working with us is positive. And we see China and Russia, Brexit, as some of the main issues. One of the things we did talk about was the turmoil in Europe last time. Did you think that Theresa May would be stepping down last week? And, are we going to see one of her successors at this meeting?
I would imagine it's quite feasible that somebody, I would guess actually that Boris Johnson may well be there, but not on the official list. Mm-hmm. This is something that, people often criticise me for saying this, but I've absolutely cast iron proof that the Prime Minister Tony Blair was at the 1998 conference. I went up there, I spoke to people, I spoke to a woman that served him breakfast, but he wasn't on the list. This is the way they do things. If there's somebody that would be very politically sensitive, they make sure they're not on there. There are some pretty strong hints that Mike Pompeo is going to be at this meeting, even though he's not on the official list. So Boris Johnson is almost a shoe-in for the replacement of Theresa May. He's a Bullingdon club boy, friend of George Osborne and David Cameron. Well, I say friend. They were in this cult in Oxford together, and anyone that wants to, check that out with Nathaniel Rothschild, with various other, well-known people who, well, actually not so necessarily so well-known. Jonathan Ford's one of them. He's the leader writer for the Times. For the Financial Times. This kind of thing is the way the Brits have cooked things up over the years at Oxford. If you're in this club, you go around and you smash things up. George Osborne will turn up the next day with a checkbook and just make sure all the repairs are paid for. And you can do what you want. And also, as part of that, you're told, well, you're going to be running the country when you're older. And the thing is that the point of doing this is a kind of bit like Skull and Bones or something, I guess, in the United States, is these sorts of, it's not quite a formal secret society, but those who are controlling things from behind the scenes or steering events, the people with the power and the money, know that they need to have people out up the front who are in front of the camera these days on the TV live, on the rolling news channel explaining things, and they want to make sure that those people are owned by them, and they do that by getting them into all sorts of trouble as youngsters, promising them great things, and then making sure that they've got plenty of dirt on them so that they know that they had better toe the line or else there'll be trouble. Those are the sort of perfect blackmailable politicians that I think Boris Johnson is one of, and so he's almost certainly going to be the next Prime Minister after Theresa May. Actually, I did predict it. It's nice that you ask. And I actually put a picture of a Klingon from Star Trek up about a week ago on Facebook saying, come on, Theresa, can't you take a hint or something? Some sort of silly joke, But anyway, I was quite amazed to see she actually did finally go. It was getting to that stage where I think everyone was feeling, well, that she's just banging her head against a brick wall.